He's prepared to use every element of American power to stop drugs from flooding into our country and to bring those responsible to justice. The Maduro regime is not the legitimate government of Venezuela. It is a narco-terror cartel. Invisible rifles for the peasant militia to defend Venezuela's territory, sovereignty, and peace. Almost overnight, that's how things stand between the United States and Venezuela. Donald Trump has already deployed at least 3 destroyers to the Caribbean in a show of naval force not seen in this region for many years. The official objective? To fight drug cartels and keep them from operating in these waters? The main target is the Cartel of the Suns, allegedly led, according to the U.S. government, by Maduro himself. Washington has even put a $50 million bounty on his head for anyone who helps put him behind bars. They accuse him of nothing less than flooding the United States with all kinds of drugs. We're talking about 3 massive Arleigh-Burke-class destroyers equipped with guided missile systems, including the famous Tomahawks, and fitted with the Aegis air defense system capable of shooting down everything from planes to ballistic missiles. They're true platforms for intelligence, surveillance, and precision strikes. And they're not coming alone. They're reaccompanied by a fleet that so far totals at least 6 vessels and about 4,000 Marines ready for whatever may come. All of this, they say, is to fight Latin American drug trafficking. But of course, the size of this force raises a question. Seriously, was such a massive deployment really necessary for that? Keep in mind that the last 2 times Washington flexed so much military muscle in the region were first during Operation Just Cause, the 1989 U.S. invasion of Panama, which, as we all know, ended with Manuel Noriega behind bars in a Miami prison, and second, in 1994, during Operation Uphold Democracy, when the United States deployed about 25,000 troops and 2 aircraft carriers to intervene in Haiti. Naturally, this has put dictator Maduro on high alert. Music, our seas, our skies, and our lands, we defend them ourselves. We liberate them ourselves. We guard and patrol them ourselves. No empire will ever set foot on Venezuela's sacred soil. In recent hours, Maduro has announced, with his usual bluster, a plan to mobilize no less than 4.5 million militiamen across the country. This militia was created by Hugo in 2005 as part of the Bolivarian National Armed Forces, but in practice it's mostly retired farmers, armed with rifles in exchange for a couple of extra bags of rice from the state food program. And so, with the combination of military maneuvers, intelligent civilians in disguise, and Maduro's fiery statements, there's already a whiff of fear in Caracas, which may be exactly what Donald Trump is trying to spark with this sudden deployment. Friends, this could all be just a piece of Trumpist propaganda theater, or maybe this time it's serious. What if the United States really has a plan for Venezuela? What if Trump were willing to use this naval force in some way? And no, I'm not talking about invading the country. In fact, military experts have already warned that, while the deployment is significant, it's still far, far too small to envision U.S. troops marching into Venezuela. Besides, a ground invasion doesn't fit at all with the MAGA brand. Let's be honest, nobody has a crystal ball, but for now. Seeing U.S. Marines in Caracas still sounds like science fiction. But hold on, that doesn't mean the story ends here. Far from it. The goal of this massive operation could be very different. It could be part of another kind of plan, with several options that could reshape Venezuela's history. And friends, with the information we have, that's exactly what we want to explain in this video. Are we really looking at an operation against the Chavista narcomafia? Or are we watching the opening act of something much bigger? What if this is the prelude to a secret plan to topple Maduro? What if those 6 ships aren't just monitoring cocaine shipments, but are preparing for an operation against the regime itself? Pay close attention, because the largest concentration of U.S. military power in Latin America in decades may not be a mere coincidence. Trump's options, let's be honest. The U.S. show of force we're seeing has caught almost everyone off guard, starting with the top brass at Miraflores Palace and Fuerte Tuna. They simply weren't expecting it, especially considering that this threat comes alongside other news that, at first glance, seems contradictory. Take this example. The United States has just renewed imports of Venezuelan oil under a new license granted to Chevron. Moves like that make many analysts think Trump's deployment is nothing more than a scare tactica. Way to make the Chavistas nervous and remind everyone who the big kid on the playground is. But again, what if it's not just a few ships going for a cruise? Could the U.S. actually carry out some kind of operation? Let's review the possible scenarios that might be on the table right now. Think of this as a spectrum from the least likely to stir up drama to the most aggressive and risky. For many observers, despite everything, the most likely outcome is still that absolutely nothing happens. Yes, I know it's the least exciting option, but it's the most probable. In other words, the fleet may simply be there to contain drug traffickers, draw media attention, pressure cartels into reducing shipments, stage a few headline-grabbing seizures, and at the same time, rattle the nerves of Chavista officials so they'll accept more U.S. demands. This wouldn't be the first time. Washington has done something like this, maybe not on such a large scale, but back in 2020, U.S. destroyers already patrolled these same Caribbean waters. So why would the Trump administration repeat the maneuver? Well, obviously not to keep its ships from rusting at the docks. By flexing military muscle, Trump can make a statement, a warning to the Chavista regime, without triggering an actual crisis. It's like saying, look where we are. Either you do more to stop Venezuelan drugs from reaching U.S. shores, or next time these ships won't just be cruising, they'll be launching missiles. And let's not forget, those missiles could easily be aimed at drug production sites, Venezuelan military bases, or even regime-controlled infrastructure. Because in Washington's view, there's no real difference anymore between Venezuelan narco-traffickers, it's the military and the state itself. So, the ultimate goal here might simply be to park a fleet off Venezuela's coast and send a global message. Trump means business. He's ready to hit the bad guys, and if the drug flow doesn't stop, the regime and its collaborators will face the consequences. Now, that's only one possibility. Another is that Trump might actually intend to use this military force. Remember, he's done it before? Not long ago in Iran. You all remember that, right? And this is where the real game begins, the heart of the matter. Using force doesn't necessarily mean firing off dozens of missiles, overthrowing Maduro, or sending Marines into Caracas. There are several possible ways to put this military pressure to work, and each one could achieve very specific goals. Picture this. Anatoly Karpov, the chess grandmaster, was famous for his suffocating positional play. He didn't go for the quick checkmate. He slowly pushed his opponent into a corner with no way out. And friends, that's exactly what the U.S. could be doing now, squeezing Maduro until he has no choice but to give ground. Trump could score a double victory here, both political and diplomatic, simply by ramping up military presence in the Caribbean. Imagine the scenario, sitting Maduro back down at the negotiating table, forcing him to give the U.S. more cooperation on the issues Washington actually cares about. Let's be crystal clear here. If anyone thinks Trump, or anyone else in Washington, truly cares about Venezuela's dictatorship, repression, or humanitarian crisis, but that's naive. Uncle Sam doesn't lift a finger to save Venezuelans, Syrians, Ukrainians, or anyone else. The U.S. acts only when its own interests are at stake. Can make America great again, remember? So what are those interests? Well, under the Karpov strategy, the U.S. wouldn't seek to topple the regime, but to bend it. For example, first, forcing Maduro to accept far more deported Venezuelan migrants from the United States. Right now, detention centers in the U.S. are overflowing. Deportations are bottlenecked in the courts. By pressuring Caracas to take deportation flights faster, Trump could ease a huge domestic headache. Second, Trump could pressure Chavismo to release more political prisoners, an easy way to score a political win, especially with Hispanic voters back home. Third, he could demand the arrest and extradition of top Venezuelan narcobosses to face trial in the U.S. Any one of these outcomes would give Trump a badly needed political boost. His approval rating is stuck at around 40%, the lowest point of his presidency. A victory tied to Venezuela could give him a new lease on political life. And don't forget the diplomatic angle. Keeping a U.S. fleet stationed off Venezuela's coast could also serve as a loud message to Cuba and Russia. Don't get too comfortable here. This is my backyard and I do whatever I want with it. It would be a show of dominance not just to Caracas, but also to Moscow and Havana. It could even serve as leverage in broader U.S.-Russia negotiations over the war in Ukraine. Though to be fair, that's probably the least important factor in all of this.